Hi, everybody. I'm Mimi Fernandez. I work for a company called Beyond Booksmart, and we are an executive function coaching company. So the executive function part of your brain is your prefrontal cortex. So one of the ways that we approach coaching is through stages of change called the trans-theoretical model. So I thought it'd be fun to take the stages of change model and think about clients and think about onboarding, but also think about our teams. Looking at Emily's previous talk, and how can we look at the stage of change for our teams and for our clients. So I do the next one. Okay, so as a customer success directors and managers, you are change facilitators. People are coming to you for adopting a new service, for transforming their business, changing the way they work in new processes and systems, and also learning new languages. 70% of change programs fail to achieve their goals, largely due to resistance, lack of management support, and even the most complex change, even digital transformations, when they're planned and when they're supported along the way. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. You guys are all so impressive. I'll just be vulnerable. But when successful customer success teams can foster and develop a mutually beneficial relationship between their company and the customers they work with. So the prospect of change puts our brains in high gear. We need to manage our emotions, emotional regulation we call it, focus our attention, we're organizing and planning, and we're also asking our people to think flexibly. So oftentimes I say, it's not what you're saying, it's how they're hearing. And I think I heard before someone say, ask them to repeat back to you what you're saying so that you know that you're communicating, but also realize that there's just a lot of stuff going on in their brains at this moment. And I think it's also important to evaluate the type of change that you're approaching. In the trans-theoretical model, it was actually developed for things like smoking cessation, where you're actually chemically changing your brain. But there's also structural changes you're trying to ask for, new pathways, new ways of thinking. And then functional change, how are we growing and expanding on the change that we're learning? So kind of identifying where you are with that interaction you're approaching. So the mindset theory and behavior change, hopefully all of our people are in the higher mindsets, but you might get pre-contemplative people. They're unaware of the problem. Contemplation is they're aware of the problem and the desire for behavior change, which is probably a lot of where we're playing. Preparation, they're intending to take an action. Action is where we want to be, is that they're doing the desired behavior, and then maintenance is where we can really upscale and upskill and ask for things that we need. So a little bit about pre-contemplation. This is where there's no intention for behavior change. I do not want this. Many individuals in this, they're unaware that they have problems that need to be fixed. They probably were shoved, this new product or service. I'll give you an example. We work with a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers and college students whose parents buy our service for them. And so they're pre-contemplative often, especially my 14-year-old who is a Coach E, but we got there. We got to contemplation. I also think it's important to think about how they're absorbing information. They're not going to go through a long onboarding process and retain all the things that you want them to retain. So some of the things that are successful when someone's in this stage is they show up, that they're responding to your emails, that they're engaging in conversation, that they're really open to some idea. They're open to the idea of an idea. So, this is a time where you can really be empathetic, create some awareness, and share some understanding. Like, we understand that this is a challenging time for you. Here's some examples of how we've worked through this before. Does anybody have a client right now in pre-contemplation? We talked about that, Michelle. Yeah, so Michelle's client, just doesn't want to do the thing and doesn't want to answer emails, and you kind of kill them with kindness. So you're really understanding what is going to break through, and sometimes it's going to take more time than you would like it to take to get through. If you do that and you get to contemplation, This is when you want to engage with content. You want to, they're starting to have these aha moments with you. There's a connection. They may be making or reacting to plans. And you can persuade and motivate them to maybe do the next thing. And they can feed back to you what might happen. Oh, if I do this, this thing might happen. And they're not ready to implement the service, so don't push too much at this stage. They're thinking about it. They're thinking like, it might be too hard. And I actually use Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and kind of look up these people. What are they doing with their lives outside of work? How can I connect with them? Maybe even start meetings with, who's binging what right now. Just trying to get through to them in a human way versus diving in. I was onboarded recently with a company, and it was terrible. Every time they met with us, the cameras were off, and I felt really apprehensive about what we were doing. I was trying to convince this company I was advising on that we should do this, and I thought, gosh, they're not even engaging with me. I'm trying to engage with them. And we ended up kept going, but I just don't have a great feeling about this company. So, cameras on. When we get to preparation, this is a time to really hammer in on the pain points. Show how you can alleviate friction. And also, I think this is a time when there is friction, you can build trust. So I don't know when you have kind of hard times with a client, it's actually a real opportunity to build trust, like, oh, we got through that together. So if you can get through something together and kind of make ways for new pathways, if they're in preparation, this is a great time to build that trust and not be as afraid for if you do mess up a little. When we are in preparation, oftentimes we're starting to use the same language. I notice that people in teams, when they're coming together, they start to say things like, well, as so-and-so said, or they start to amplify other people's conversations. So that's a good indication that you're in preparation. And then when we go to action, people are starting to use the strategies. They're ready for a new, healthier behavior. They're implementing the habits. They're saying, this habit is working for me. I'm ready to do the next thing. It takes willpower to get to this stage, and there's a high risk of going backwards. So one of the things that I'll probably wrap up with is people can go in and out of these stages. They can be in action, and all of a sudden, like, they're back to pre-contemplation because something failed. So I think it's just important to know that this isn't static. Action is a great place to be, but you should always be on high alert that they can go to different mindsets. And your role is to facilitate and support. You're there to make sure the meetings are happening, make sure that things are happening on time. You can de-escalate missteps pretty quickly, and it's a good time to start celebrating them. And this is an important part, is the accountability piece. Remember, we said we were going to get to this point by now. I just wanted to check in and see where we are. And really feed back the wins to the entire team. People in action are ready for the next step, and so there can't be too much lag time between the successes or the wins. And then when we're in maintenance, we're all in love. Everything is wonderful. We're moving along in the right direction. This is a really great time. There's a level of comfort and easiness. Maybe you guys are, having regular gatherings. And this is where true habits are formed, but this is also when people are saying, I did that, what's next? And so they want a challenge. They want you to keep pushing them. It's a time to upsell and think about new features. These are people that will advocate for you. Ask them the question, would you be in a video for us? Would you be a referral source? And then, amplify them. Invite them to speak to your next conference, or be on your podcast, or write a blog. And if their voice is amplified, they start to feel that they made the right decision working with you. And then integrating the stages of change is to me, it's really about evaluation. Where, if you wanted to use these as a verb, saying, "Oh, we've got one in pre-contemplation over here. Let's make sure we're all rallying around that client." So I think having that common language internally can be helpful. These stages are not static. People can, we have parents say to us, they would go 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. So when they are going through the stages back and forth, it can feel like whiplash, but if you identify it and name it, you can solve for it. And then I use the question, "Tell me more," a lot. So people, I know it's very therapy style, but if they say something, just pause and say, "Tell me more. Tell me more about what you're feeling or how you're thinking." And then, of course, approach with empathy. We all do that. We're all CS people here, but it's never, we can never be reminded too much. I thought it might be fun if we wanted to talk about a client or a current employee who might be in a stage of change, and maybe there's 1 or 2 that we could talk about and solve for or think about ideas for. Because I went through that fast. Does anybody have any clients they want to talk about? I can actually talk about one that I'm working on this week. I'll give mine. So this is a family. They just want their daughter to use a planner. It's just like they're so tired of her missing her appointments, and she's a senior in high school. She's going to college. We had a team who was working with them, and I started to notice, and I think I referred to this yesterday because it's so fresh in my mind. I started to know that the language was not going well between these 2 people, the CS person and the parents. I wish I would have jumped in sooner, which I didn't. But we got them on the phone, and we just listened, and as and what I would prescribe them as in pre-contemplation or contemplation, definitely not an action. Well, let me back up. The parents are in action. The child is in pre-contemplation, contemplation. So we have 2 people on different pages, we took the other team off the case, got in front of them, and just today we solved for it by getting a new coach for them. But it took a lot of time and effort, and this client, for what they're paying us, we spent way more. And I think if I would have noticed sooner that the parents and the child were off balance, I think maybe we could have done something more, quickly. So, okay.
Example, and maybe some people can resonate with this, but I have a couple customers in our org that have gone through some layoffs, right? It's a tough macroeconomic climate, and now they're in a sit and wait. And we talk about the parent and child, we are in action and we know we need to do stuff to make this client successful, but they just want to sit and wait and want to tell us to hold off in the next quarter, blah, blah, blah. But we need to be in there now to show the value, prove the value, especially with impending renewals coming up. So I guess that's the challenge, and we're having a hard time just getting them to respond.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or any recommendations?
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's a software. It's a subscription-based service for sales routing.
And they're laying off people.
The clients are.
Yeah. The client of the client? Your client is laying off people. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they're in, they are all in a flurry right now because they're laying off people, they have too much work. I think empathy, going back to empathy and saying, let's take a step back, let's pause, and let's see how can we help you during this difficult time of all your layoffs. Is there something we could do to support, or can our software do something that will fix a automation problem that they might have? But I think addressing the thing in the room, because they probably are now back into contemplation on your product. That's just why they're not responding to you, and they need to be almost resold and reconvinced that this is the right choice that they've made. I also think it's important as service providers is how can we help them find their next. I know they're not hiring right now because they're laying off, but if people are not staffed up, how can we help them find their next person? Almost be a recruitment source for them. I know that has nothing to do with mindsets, but just an idea.